The greatest tales of Persia are not written in ink, but etched in stone. We are going on a journey to decode 25 ancient monuments, from forgotten ziggurats to luminous mosques, each one a locked chest holding a secret message. By the end, you will possess the keys to understanding stories of divine kings, lost languages, and cosmic blueprints hidden in plain sight for centuries. How did a 300-foot-high cliff face become a permanent propaganda billboard? What secret does a simple stone tomb hold about the nature of just rule? We will uncover the whispers of power, faith, and rebellion encoded in architecture. What do you believe is the most powerful message a civilization can leave behind? Our journey begins not with a building but with a mountain. High on the sheer limestone face of Mount Behistun in western Iran, 300 feet above the ancient road, a king declared his truth to the world. This is the Behistun inscription, and it is far more than a royal record. It is a three-part puzzle carved in stone, a masterpiece of political theater meant to be seen from a distance but understood only by the gods and the most learned of men. The central panel shows Darius the Great, life-sized and imposing, with his foot placed firmly upon the chest of a defeated rebel. Before him stand 9 more bound captives, representing the usurpers he crushed to secure his throne. Above them all, the Faravahar, the symbol of divine grace and kingship, floats as a silent witness blessing the scene. But the true power lies not in the image but in the words that surround it. The same story is told 3 times, carved in 3 different languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. This was a deliberate, brilliant act of communication. Darius was not just speaking to his own people, he was addressing the entire administrative and priestly machinery of his vast empire. By using the common diplomatic languages of the day, he ensured his version of events would be read, copied, and disseminated from Babylon to Persepolis. The hidden message here is one of absolute control, both political and historical. The inscription claims the rebellions were not a sign of weakness, but of chaos that he, the rightful king by the will of the god Ahura Mazda, was destined to quell. It transforms a messy, brutal succession struggle into a divinely sanctioned restoration of order, and by carving it on an inaccessible cliff, Darius made it permanent, immutable, and incredibly difficult to alter. For over 2 millennia, his narrative stood unchallenged, literally set in stone, until 19th century adventurers finally scaled the cliff and gave the world the key to unlocking ancient cuneiform itself. This monument whispers that history belongs not to those who live it, but to those who carve its record. That inaccessibility was the entire point. Darius did not want his message edited or defaced by future generations. By placing his words 300 feet up a sheer cliff, he rendered them untouchable, a declaration of power so absolute it existed beyond human reach. For centuries, travelers on the road below could see the grand tableau, a testament to a king's might, but the details, the specific claims of divine right and crushed rebellion, remained a blur. The monument whispered its power but kept its secrets locked away. That is, until a 19-year-old British Army officer named Henry Rawlinson arrived in the 1830s. Fascinated by the mysterious script, Rawlinson made it his life's work to decode it. He would spend years risking his life, dangling from ropes and precarious wooden scaffolds to meticulously copy the strange symbols. His most daring act involved crossing a terrifying chasm on a plank lashed between 2 ledges with a sheer drop below him, just to reach the Babylonian portion of the text. He made paper casts called squeezes of the inscriptions, bringing the ancient words down from the mountain at great personal peril. Back on solid ground, Rawlinson and other scholars painstakingly compared the 3 parallel texts. They used the known royal names and titles in Old Persian as a key, slowly cracking the code of cuneiform wedge writing. This was not merely an academic exercise, it was a resurrection. The Behistun inscription became the Rosetta Stone of the ancient Near East. By deciphering it, scholars did not just read Darius's propaganda, they unlocked the libraries of Babylon and Nineveh, revealing the Epic of Gilgamesh, law codes, and countless economic tablets. So the cliff that was meant to project untouchable, eternal control ultimately gave up its secrets, becoming the very key that unlocked a lost world. This first monument sets the stage for everything to come, a perfect duality of ancient message and modern discovery. From that solitary cliff face proclaiming one king's power, we travel to the very heart of an empire's public spectacle. If Behistun was a solitary decree, Persepolis was a symphony in stone. This was the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, a vast platform built not for defense but for display. Every visitor, from subject to ambassador, approached via the grand staircase, a deliberate architectural choice that forced a slow, respectful ascent into the presence of the King of Kings. At the top awaited the Apadana Palace, its roof supported by 72 towering columns, a forest of stone meant to inspire awe and dwarf any human who entered. But the true message was not in the scale alone, it was carved into the very walls. The famous reliefs lining the staircases and platforms show an endless, orderly procession. Delegation after delegation from across the empire, from the Medes and Armenians to the Ethiopians and Indians, each dressed in their distinct national costume, each bringing gifts of tribute. They are shown not as conquered foes, but as honored guests participating in a grand, universal pageant. Look closely at these scenes. You will find no images of battle, no prisoners in chains, no scenes of violence that were so common in the palaces of Assyrian rivals. This was a radical statement. The hidden message of Persepolis is one of peaceful unification under a benevolent, divinely sanctioned order. The empire is portrayed not as a military conquest, but as a cosmic family gathered under one roof. Central to this message is the recurring symbol of the Faravaha, the winged disc hovering above the king or important scenes. It represents the divine favor of Ahura Mazda, visually connecting the king's rule to a heavenly mandate. The orderly procession of nations is not chaotic. Each group is led by a Persian or Median usher, showing a careful hierarchical integration. Every detail, from the clasped hands of the ushers to the gentle grip on the animals being led forward, broadcasts stability and control. Persepolis whispers that here, at the center of the world, diversity is managed, prosperity flows, and peace is maintained by a king who is both a political and a spiritual axis. It was the ultimate propaganda piece, a stone manifesto arguing that Persian rule was the natural, peaceful, and prosperous order of the world. Yet this grand stone symphony was left unfinished. Scattered around the site are the haunting remains of tombs, their facades carved directly into the rocky hillside in imitation of those at Naqsh-e Rustam, but their interiors never completed. These silent chambers whisper of an empire interrupted, of ambitions cut short. They tell us that even the most powerful propaganda machine is vulnerable to the sudden turns of history. But while the monumental art spoke to the public, a far more intimate message was being stamped into soft clay in back offices. Discovered by archaeologists were the Persepolis fortification tablets, a staggering collection of thousands of small clay records. These were not royal decrees, but administrative receipts, payrolls, and travel permits. One tablet might record the payment of 3 silver shekels to a carpenter for work on a door. Another details the barley ration for a priestess traveling from Susa with her servants. This is the hidden message in the mundane, the breathtaking truth that the empire's true power lay in its bureaucracy. The monumental reliefs show the ideal, the perfect procession of nations, but these tiny tablets reveal the gritty, daily logistics that made that ideal possible. They show a system that fed its workers, paid fair wages, and tracked movement across vast distances with meticulous care. It was this network of accountability and supply, this silent language of logistics, that truly held the empire together. This mundane paperwork reveals a message of astonishing organizational control, proving that propaganda alone cannot build a world power, but careful administration can. At the ceremonial entrance to this complex stood the Gate of All Nations, flanked by colossal stone bulls with the heads of bearded men. Above the gateway, inscriptions in 3 languages proclaim the work of Xerxes, son of Darius. He states that he completed what his father began, but a subtle shift in language occurs. Where Darius often credited Ahura Mazda, Xerxes sometimes places more emphasis on his own royal lineage and power. Scholars pore over these nuances, debating whether this signals a move toward a more autocratic style of kingship, a hidden message in royal grammar. But perhaps the most brutal decoding of Persepolis' message came not from a Persian king, but from a conqueror. The burning of Persepolis by Alexander the Great's troops remains shrouded in debate. Was it a drunken accident during a celebration, as some ancient sources suggest, or a calculated political act? Many historians see it as the ultimate symbolic erasure. Alexander could have simply looted the treasury, but by setting fire to the Grand Apodona and its palaces, he was sending a deliberate signal across the empire. He was not just defeating the Persian army on a battlefield, he was annihilating its very heart, the physical embodiment of its divine right to rule. The flames that consumed those wooden ceilings and melted the gold and silver were a message written in fire, declaring that the old cosmic order was gone and a new one had arrived. So Persepolis speaks in layers, from the lofty ideals carved on its walls, to the mundane truth of its clay tablets, to the fiery punctuation mark of its end. Just a short distance from the smoldering memory of Persepolis, a sheer cliff face rises from the plain, holding its silence with a different kind of gravity. This is Naqsh-e Rustam, the Valley of the Kings for the Persian Empire. High above the desert floor, 4 colossal crosses are carved directly into the living rock. These are the tombs of Achaemenid kings, believed to be Darius the Great, Xerxes, Artaxerxes I, and Darius II. Their facades are identical, each a perfect cruciform shape with a central door leading into the burial chamber. From a distance, they appear as simple, solemn symbols of eternity, but the message here is one of deliberate, unbreakable continuity. By creating identical tombs, these rulers were visually stitching their legacies together, presenting a unified dynasty of power that transcended any individual king. They chose not to build pyramids or standalone mausoleums, but to become part of the mountain itself, a permanent fusion of royal identity with the enduring land of Persia. The door at the center of each cross is believed to be a symbolic entrance, not for the living but for the soul of the king, perhaps to ascend toward the Faravaha symbol carved above it, linking his rule eternally to the divine. It is a statement of glory meant to last as long as the stone. The true conversation at Naqsh-e Rustam, however, happens not above but below. Carved onto the lower sections of the same cliff centuries later are dramatic rock reliefs from the Sasanian Empire. Here, a new dynasty of Persian kings sought to connect their own glory to this sacred site. The most striking shows King Shapur I on horseback, his arm gripped firmly around the wrist of a standing Roman emperor, while another emperor, likely Valerian, kneels submissively before the king's horse. This is not a hidden message, it is a bold public declaration. The Sasanians were rewriting history on the canvas of their predecessors' necropolis. By placing their victories over Rome directly beneath the tombs of the great Achaemenids, they were creating a visual argument, a lineage of triumph. They were saying the spirit of Persian victory did not die with Alexander's fire, it lives in us. We are the rightful heirs to this cliff and to this legacy of imperial dominance. But the most cryptic speaker at this site stands alone on the valley floor. Facing the Cliff of Kings is a perfect windowless square tower known as the Kaaba-i-Zartasht, the cube of Zoroaster. Built of gleaming white limestone blocks, it is a stark geometric puzzle in the middle of the desert. its purpose has baffled scholars for generations. Some believe it was a fire temple, a sealed chamber where a sacred eternal flame could be protected from the wind. Others argue it was a royal treasury or a secure archive for holy texts. A more intriguing theory suggests it was an astronomical observatory, its alignment and design meant for tracking celestial events critical to the Zoroastrian calendar. The tower's walls are covered in inscriptions from the Sasanian period, lengthy proclamations in 3 languages that scholars have painstakingly translated. Yet, even with the words deciphered, the building's core function remains an enigma. The messages on its skin tell of royal deeds and piety, but the silent, hollow space inside guards its original secret. It is a perfect metaphor for our entire quest, a beautiful, imposing box whose contents we can only guess at, placed as if in quiet dialogue with the tombs of kings across the centuries. What agreement, what understanding existed between that lonely cube and the mountain of the dead? That silent cube stands in stark contrast to our next destination, a place where a single, simple structure carries a message of breathtaking humanity. We travel now to the windswept plain of Pasargadae, the first capital of the Achaemenid Empire. Here, rising from a quiet field, is the tomb of Cyrus the Great. It is not carved into a mountain, nor is it adorned with grand reliefs. It is a modest, gabled house of pale limestone, resting on a stepped platform. Its power lies entirely in its stark, beautiful simplicity. After the colossal ambitions of later kings, Cyrus's final resting place feels almost humble, a quiet statement from the man who forged an empire. The hidden message is in this very restraint. While Egyptian pharaohs disappeared into vast pyramids and his own successors would merge with cliffsides, Cyrus chose a form anyone could recognize: a house. It suggests a king who, even in death, wished to be approachable, a ruler still connected to his people. This architectural humility speaks directly to the principles found on the Cyrus cylinder, that famous clay declaration discovered in Babylon. Its text, often called an early charter of human rights, champions religious tolerance and the freedom of displaced peoples to return home. The tomb is that philosophy made stone, a monument not to conquest but to benevolent order. Its placement is no accident. Scholars have noted its precise alignment with the sunrise during the equinoxes, connecting the king's legacy to the cosmic balance, a theme central to his just rule. Ancient historians like Arrian recorded that within this small chamber once lay a golden sarcophagus, and that an inscription on the tomb read, "O man, I am Cyrus, who founded the Persian Empire and was king of Asia." Grudge me not, therefore, this monument. Whether these words were truly carved or are a later legend, they capture the essence of the site's message, a direct, almost personal appeal from a great king to any future visitor. It asks not for awe, but for respect. This explains the profound impact it had centuries later on a very different conqueror. Alexander the Great, upon reaching Pasargadae after his defeat of Darius III, did not desecrate the tomb. Instead, he ordered it restored and paid his respects. He recognized in this simple structure a model of kingship that transcended rivalry, a legacy of justice that even he, the destroyer of Persepolis, felt compelled to honor. In its quiet isolation, Cyrus's tomb whispers that the greatest power a ruler can project is not intimidation, but a legacy of mercy so enduring it commands reverence from enemies across the centuries. But the legacy of Cyrus, built on justice and restraint, would be tested and transformed by the empires that followed. Centuries later, a new Persian dynasty would choose a different language of power, one carved not in quiet fields but into the living rock of a mountainside. We find it at Naqsh-e, Boston, a natural spring that became a royal canvas. Here, the Sasanian kings did not build upward, they carved inward, creating magnificent grottos and arches directly from the cliff. The largest of these, a grand Ivan or arched niche, holds a scene of profound spiritual and political theater. Inside, two larger-than-life figures face each other. On the right stands the Sasanian king, perhaps Khosrow II, receiving the divine right to rule. But he is not alone. To his left, the god Ahura Mazda, recognizable by his distinctive beard and crown, hands the king a ring, the symbol of royal authority. And mirroring this action on the opposite side is the goddess Anahita, a deity of waters and fertility, offering her own ring. This is the hidden message in the iconography, a brilliant piece of theological diplomacy. By showing both the supreme god and a popular, life-giving goddess investing him with power, the king visually roots his authority in both cosmic order and earthly prosperity. He is blessed by the masculine principle of divine wisdom and the feminine principle of natural abundance, uniting the spiritual and material realms under his crown. Look closer at the king himself. His armor is not plain. It is a masterpiece of detailed stonework depicting rows of intricate chainmail and scaled plates. Every link, every pattern is a statement. This is not just protection, it is a display of immense wealth and advanced metallurgy, a testament to the empire's artisans who could turn metal into a second skin of power. The divine figures are equally ornate, their robes flowing with meticulously carved folds, their crowns and halos radiating authority. The entire scene is a symphony in stone, proclaiming that Sasanian rule is supported by heaven, defended by technology, and destined for eternity. Yet, for all its divine grandeur, the most striking message at naqsh-e Boston is astonishingly human and immediate. Tucked within a smaller arch is a life-sized carving of a Sasanian cataphract, a fully armored heavy cavalryman, seated upon his equally armored warhorse. This is not a symbolic god or a distant king, this is a soldier. Every detail is rendered with breathtaking realism, from the lamellar armor plating that covers both man and beast, to the lance held at the ready, to the chainmail veil protecting the rider's face. This is a hidden message of raw military might. It whispers of the battlefield, of the thunderous charge of the Savaran, the knightly elite who are the unstoppable fist of the Sasanian army. It is a propaganda piece aimed at any envoy or visitor, a silent but unmistakable warning carved in stone, showcasing the technological prowess that made this cavalry the terror of both desert and plain. But naqsh-e Boston holds one more secret, a scene of peace to balance its display of war. On the back wall of the large grotto, behind the investiture scene, is a detailed bas-relief that many scholars believe depicts a royal hunt. Yet, woven into this imagery are the unmistakable symbols of Nowruz, the Persian New Year celebration. We see a banquet, musicians playing, and the king amidst a paradisiacal garden of trees and birds. This is more than a leisurely pastime, it is the world's oldest known depiction of this ancient festival. By carving Nowruz into this sacred royal site, the Sasanians were embedding a message of unbroken cultural continuity. They were saying that their power was not just about gods and armies, but about preserving the eternal rhythms of Persian life, the celebration of renewal, and the king's role as the guardian of tradition. In this one mountain spring, stone speaks of divine right, military innovation, and the enduring heartbeat of a culture, all flowing together from the same source. From royal hunts and divine investiture, we move to a monument of profound silence, where architecture serves not kings, but the cosmos itself. High on remote hilltops, often outside ancient cities like Yazd, stand stark circular structures known as the Towers of Silence. These are not towers in the conventional sense, but open-air, raised platforms of stone with a chillingly precise purpose. They are dakmas, built for the Zoroastrian practice of sky burial. Here, the hidden message is not carved in relief or stamped in clay. It is encoded in ritual and raw philosophy. In the Zoroastrian faith, the physical body after death is considered nasu, ritually impure. The four sacred elements, earth, fire, water, and air, must not be contaminated by decay. A traditional burial would pollute the earth, cremation would defile fire, and water burial would taint the water. The Dakma presented a startlingly logical, if severe, solution. The deceased would be carried by special bearers, the nacelers, up the hill and into the tower. The body would then be exposed on the flat, open stone platform, arranged in concentric circles, men on the outer ring, women in the middle, and children in the innermost ring. There, it would be left to the elements and to scavenging birds, primarily vultures, which would swiftly clean the bones. After the elements had bleached the skeleton, the remaining bones would be collected and placed in a central ossuary pit where lime would aid their final dissolution. Every aspect of this architecture whispers a message of spiritual ecology and cosmic order. The raised platform protects the sacred earth. The open air allows the sun and wind to purify. The vultures, often reviled elsewhere, are here seen as essential agents of a sacred cleanup, liberating the soul from its impure shell with breathtaking efficiency. The separation by gender within the circles speaks to a meticulous social order maintained even in death. This is a monument to dualism, the eternal struggle between purity and corruption, rendered in stone and ritual. It declares that the soul's ascent is paramount and that the physical world must be kept scrupulously clean to allow that journey. The silent, windswept hilltop becomes a theater for the soul's release, a stark and powerful contrast to the earthly glory sought by kings in their cliffside tombs. It asks a fundamental question: what is the ultimate fate of the self, and how far should a society go to protect the sanctity of the world it leaves behind? That stark philosophy of purity leads us to a monument built for a very different kind of ascent, the climb of a man to an empire. Deep in the southern valley of Firuzabad, far from the cosmopolitan centers, rises the palace of Ardashir I. This is not just a royal residence, it is a declaration of revolution carved from stone and mortar. Ardashir, the founder of the Sasanian Empire, built his power base here deliberately, constructing his sprawling palace complex in the shadow of a vanquished Parthian castle. The message was physical and undeniable: the old order lies in ruins, and from its dust a new, greater power is born. You approach the palace and are immediately confronted by its most stunning feature, a colossal Ivan, a vaulted hall open on one side that soars to a breathtaking height. This architectural form was not new, but its scale here was revolutionary. To step into that shadowed, towering space was to be physically overwhelmed by the presence of the king, a psychological tactic built right into the walls. But the true architectural genius, the hidden message of innovation, is overhead. Look up into the corners of the great halls where the square rooms transition into circular domes. You will see the earliest known, fully developed use of squinches in Persia. A squinch is a brilliant little architectural solution, a series of small arches or a niche built across the corner of a square room. They create an octagonal base, which then makes it possible to set a circular dome on top of a square room. This might sound technical, but its impact was monumental. It allowed the Sasanians to crown their spaces with soaring, celestial domes, creating interiors that felt like microcosms of the heavens. This was not merely about roofing a hall, it was about encapsulating the king's authority under a man-made sky, a dome that symbolized his universal rule. The entire layout was a manifesto. 3 giant domed halls sit side by side, connected by corridors, flanked by courtyards and private chambers. It was a blueprint for Persian royal architecture that would be refined for centuries. But Ardashir's message was not only about grandeur, it was about control. The palace sits near a river, and a sophisticated network of channels was carved to bring fresh water directly into the heart of the complex. In this arid land, controlling water was the ultimate power. By showcasing his ability to command this vital resource, to make the desert bloom and his fountains flow, Ardashir was demonstrating a practical, benevolent authority. He could provide life itself, combined with the strategic location guarding a fertile valley and major routes. The palace shouted a simple truth: we control the land, the water, and the roads, and from this mastery an empire is built. Every stone, every arch, every diverted stream was a syllable in Ardashir's proclamation of a new dawn. From the revolutionary domes of Ardashir, we journey to a city born directly from the spoils of war. Bishapur rises from the plains, a monument not carved from rock, but built from the very humiliation of Rome. Founded by Shapur I after his decisive victories over 3 Roman emperors, this was no ordinary settlement. Its very layout was a trophy. Shapur employed Roman prisoners of war, engineers and architects captured in battle to construct his new capital. The result was a startling hybrid, a Persian city with a beating Roman heart. Unlike the more organic Persian urban plans, Bishapur was laid out on a strict Hippodamian grid, a checkerboard of straight streets intersecting at perfect right angles. This was a Greco-Roman blueprint imposed upon Persian soil, a hidden message of absolute control. Shapur was declaring that he could not only defeat Rome on the battlefield, but could command its greatest minds to build a city celebrating his own glory. The grid was a symbol of imposed order, a visual metaphor for the New World structure with Persia firmly at the center. Walking those straight avenues, a Roman prisoner would recognize the familiar logic of his own cities, but every temple, every palace, every inscription would speak of Persian gods and a Persian king. It was a psychological masterpiece, a constant, subtle reminder of their subjugation. But the true soul of Bishapur's message is found underfoot. In the royal quarter, archaeologists uncovered breathtaking mosaic floors, not of Persian design, but executed in the distinct Roman style. One famous panel shows a scene of joyous celebration, with figures playing music, dancing, and holding garlands. For decades, scholars puzzled over this. Were these scenes of a Persian festival or something more pointed? A compelling theory suggests these mosaics depict the very victory celebration for which the city was built, possibly even showing the captured Roman engineers themselves participating in the festivities. Imagine the layered message here. Roman hands, using Roman techniques, were forced to create art that commemorated their own defeat and celebrated their captor. The mosaic becomes a permanent, inescapable record of shame transformed into decoration, a brutal and elegant form of propaganda. Yet the city's most enigmatic structure speaks of assimilation, not just subjugation. At its heart lies a mysterious cruciform building known as the Anahita Temple. This stone structure, shaped like a perfect Greek cross, surrounds a deep, central chamber that was likely once filled with water channeled from a nearby river. This aligns perfectly with the worship of Anahita, the Zoroastrian goddess of waters, fertility, and wisdom. Here, the hidden message shifts from conquest to incorporation. By using a cruciform plan, a form with Hellenistic associations, to house a purely Persian deity, Shapur was performing a profound act of cultural alchemy. He was demonstrating that Persian spiritual power could inhabit and repurpose the architectural forms of the conquered. The flowing water at its center symbolized not just a goddess, but the life-giving prosperity that Persian rule now guaranteed, using Roman engineering to sustain Persian faith. Bishapur, therefore, whispers a complex dual message. Its grid and mosaic shout of military triumph and the humiliation of enemies, but its temple and its very existence whisper of a confident empire that could absorb the strengths of others, digest foreign ideas, and remake them into something distinctly and powerfully Persian. It was a statement that true supremacy lies not in mere destruction, but in the ability to capture, control, and creatively transform the very essence of those you defeat. Bishapur's grid spoke of imposed order, but another city's design emerged from a far more ancient conversation with the land itself. Rising from the heart of the Lut Desert like a mirage made solid stood the Arg-e-Bam, the largest adobe structure on Earth. For over 2,000 years, this pre-Islamic citadel was not merely a fortress, but an entire city sculpted from mud, straw, and human ingenuity. Its skyline of crenellated walls and watchtowers, all baked to a golden hue by the relentless sun, told a single, undeniable truth. Here, humanity not only survived, it thrived. The Hidden Message of BAM is a masterclass in adaptation, a survival manual written in sun-dried brick. Every element of its design answered a brutal environmental question. How do you find water in a desert? The answer flowed silently beneath the sand. The city's lifeblood was its Qanat system, a network of gently sloping underground tunnels that tapped into distant mountain aquifers and channeled the precious water by gravity alone without a single pump. Maintenance shafts dotted the desert surface, marking the hidden arteries below. This was engineering as profound philosophy, a lesson in patience and deep understanding, bringing life from the depths without disturbing the harsh surface. The water emerged within the citadel's walls, feeding gardens, filling reservoirs, and sustaining a population that could reach 13,000. The very existence of BAM was a declaration that the desert could be outwitted. The citadel's form was a direct map of its social world. Encircled by massive outer walls, the city was divided into distinct quarters, with the most formidable defenses reserved for the inner arc, the citadel within a citadel. Here, atop the highest point, sat the governor's quarters and the military barracks, a literal and symbolic pinnacle of power. From this vantage, every lane and dwelling below could be observed, a clear statement of control and protection. Winding up from the lower city was a single, easily defended ramp, forcing any approaching visitor into a vulnerable, controlled ascent. But the true heart of the city, its economic and social engine, lay within the inner walls, the covered bazaar. This shaded corridor of interconnected shops and stalls was the microcosm of the entire society, where trade, gossip, and culture flowed as steadily as the water in the Qanat. The architecture itself enforced hierarchy and security, with dead-end alleys confusing invaders, and houses built with shared walls for collective strength against both enemies and the scorching heat. The bricks held another secret. Their very composition of clay, straw, and sometimes sand or manure created a material that breathed, keeping interiors cool by day and warm by night. This was not just a fortress, it was a living organism, a coded blueprint for civilization in an unforgiving world, whispering that community, clever engineering, and strict social order were the only keys to turning a wasteland into a home. Its tragic collapse in the earthquake of 2003 did not erase its message. It merely transformed the citadel from a manual of living into a poignant monument to human fragility, its secrets now exposed in the very rubble that once formed its walls. Yet from that citadel built for survival, we come to a tomb that became a sanctuary for hope. In the ancient city of Susa, a shrine stands that is unlike any other in Persia, a place where the prayers of three faiths have echoed for centuries. This is the tomb of Daniel, revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike as the resting place of the Hebrew prophet. Its most striking feature is a unique, elongated conical dome, a white spiral that seems to reach upward like a finger pointing to the sky. This unusual architecture is not merely decorative, it is the first clue to a hidden message of syncretism, the blending of different beliefs into a shared sacred space. The dome's shape is distinct from typical Persian domes. Some scholars suggest it may have been influenced by regional styles or even evolved to represent a connection to the divine, a visual prayer made manifest in plaster and brick. But the true mystery lies within and in the legend that surrounds it. Local tradition holds that Daniel's coffin was not buried in the earth. Instead, it was suspended from the ceiling of the tomb chamber by a system of chains. The stated reason was practical, to protect the sacred remains from the frequent floods of the nearby river, yet the symbolic meaning is far more profound. A coffin hanging between the floor and the ceiling becomes a powerful metaphor. It places the prophet in a liminal space, not fully of the earth, yet not in heaven, acting as a bridge between the mortal and the divine. He becomes a conduit, his wisdom and prophecy seen as a timeless link that connects humanity to a higher truth. This imagery resonated powerfully across religious lines. For Jews, Daniel is a visionary who interpreted dreams and remained faithful in exile. For Christians, he is a prophet whose visions foreshadowed the end times. For Muslims, he is a wise figure, a prophet mentioned in the Quran. The tomb, therefore, became a neutral ground, a focal point where different communities could come to seek blessings, wisdom, and intercession without conflict. The hidden message carved into the very culture of the site is one of unity through shared reverence. It whispers that divine wisdom, as embodied by a figure like Daniel, transcends the boundaries of empires and the doctrines of any single faith. In a land that had seen the rise and fall of Zoroastrian, Islamic, and secular rulers, the enduring veneration of this tomb offered a different model, one where faiths could overlap in peace around a common symbol of perseverance and prophecy. The chains that supposedly held the coffin aloft were not just for flood control, they were a symbolic suspension of dogma, allowing a single, powerful story to be held in reverence by all. The spiral dome of Daniel's tomb points toward heaven, but our next monument sprawls across the earth as a living archive of faith itself. The Jameh Mosque of Isfahan is not a single building from one era. It is a sprawling city of worship that grew layer by layer for over 12 centuries. To walk through its vast courtyards and shaded arcades is to read a palimpsest of Persian history, where each dynasty inscribed its own chapter in brick, tile, and plaster without ever erasing the words of those who came before. The first profound message is found in its very bones. In the 11th century, Seljuk architects performed a quiet revolution. They took the traditional courtyard mosque and anchored it with 4 monumental iwans, one on each side of the central square. These soaring, vaulted portals open to the courtyard created a new sense of spatial harmony and focus. This 4-iwan plan did not just organize space, it created a cosmic crossroad. Each iwan framed a different functional space, a school, a prayer hall, a winter sanctuary, but together they spoke of balance, unity, and the encompassing embrace of the faith. This design became the definitive blueprint for mosque architecture across Iran and beyond, a hidden message of ideal form that would echo for 1,000 years. The Seljuks built in robust geometric brickwork, patterns so intricate they seem like woven textiles frozen in time, but the messages became even more eloquent with color. Centuries later, the Safavid dynasty clad the southern Iwan in a dazzling mosaic of turquoise, cobalt blue, and white tiles, transforming it into a vision of celestial splendor. This was not mere renovation, it was a statement. The Safavids who championed Shia Islam were layering their own identity onto the Seljuk Sunni foundation, visually arguing for a new chapter in the same eternal story. The most intimate and theologically charged message, however, waits inside. In a side prayer hall, you find the mihrab of Olcaytu. A mihrab is the niche in the wall that indicates the direction of Mecca, the focal point of prayer. This one, commissioned by a 14th century Mongol Ilkhanid ruler, is a masterpiece of carved stucco so delicate and deep it looks like lace. It is a dense forest of vines, flowers, and geometric patterns, but woven throughout is the true message, lines of exquisite calligraphy. The inscriptions contain the standard verses from the Quran, but they also prominently include the name of the patron, Sultan Olcaytu himself, and a theological declaration. Originally, Olcaytu had this mihrab built for a shrine in another city, intending it to honor the Shia imams. Later, he changed his mind and had it moved here. Some scholars see in the dense, almost overwhelming ornamentation a visual debate, an attempt to reconcile different schools of Islamic thought through the unifying beauty of art. The niche literally frames emptiness pointing toward the divine. yet it is filled with the most intricate human artistry imaginable, a perfect paradox. Every corner of the complex whispers of this layered dialogue. A Sasanian-era column base might be found supporting a Seljuk arch, which is itself framed by a Timurid tile mosaic. A Zoroastrian fire temple's location is respectfully absorbed into the mosque's footprint. The hidden message of the Jameh Mosque is one of profound continuity. It declares that faith is not a static monument, but a living conversation across time. Each generation does not demolish the past, it builds upon its foundations, adding its own voice to an ongoing prayer in brick and glaze, arguing that true permanence lies not in erasure, but in graceful, cumulative addition. That ongoing conversation reaches its most eloquent expression not on the walls but overhead. Crowning the Jameh Mosque are two domes, each a masterpiece of celestial engineering. To the south, the Grand Nizam al-Mulk Dome, commissioned by the powerful Seljuk vizier in the 11th century. To the north, the slightly later Taj al-Mulk Dome, smaller but often called the perfect dome for its breathtaking geometry. These are not mere roofs, they are cosmological diagrams rendered in brick. The hidden message is one of divine mathematics. The proportions of the domes, their height to their diameter, follow precise ratios that were believed to reflect the harmonic order of the cosmos itself. Stepping beneath them, you are standing inside a model of the universe as medieval scholars understood it. Look up into the Taj al-Mulk Dome. Its interior is a symphony of interlocking stars and polygons, all formed from simple baked bricks. The pattern begins as an 8-pointed star, then multiplies into a complex, radiating lattice that seems to spin slowly if you stare at it long enough. This is a deliberate representation of the celestial sphere, the dome of the heavens rotating around the axis of faith. Each brick is a pixel in a vast, sacred image. But the architects thought beyond sight. They designed for sound and light. The domes were constructed with specific acoustic properties in mind. A whisper spoken from the minbar, the pulpit, could travel with uncanny clarity to the farthest corner of the prayer hall below, making the imam's sermon feel like a personal, divine whisper in each worshipper's ear. And at certain hours, sunlight would filter through high, strategically placed windows, striking the mihrab or illuminating a specific patch of calligraphy, turning the architecture into a giant sundial and clock that marked the passage of sacred time. This careful choreography of geometry, acoustics, and light was the ultimate hidden message. The mosque was a machine for spiritual experience, a theological text written not in words but in space and sensation. It aimed to quiet the mind, focus the senses, and immerse the believer in an environment that mirrored the perfection of creation. In this space, the abstract concept of divine order became something you could hear, see, and feel pressing down upon you, a gentle, overwhelming reminder that human artistry could, for a moment, mirror heavenly harmony. From the cosmic domes of the Jameh Mosque, a short walk leads to a different kind of stage, one built for the theater of earthly power. Dominating the western side of Isfahan's vast Naqsh-e Square stands the Ali Kapı Palace, a 6-story gateway to the royal complex. Its name means the exalted gate, and its entire purpose was to frame the king's presence. The most iconic feature is its magnificent tower, a grand, columned balcony that projects from the front of the building like a proscenium arch overlooking the world's greatest stage. From this balcony, Safavid rulers like Shah Abbas would sit and observe the bustling life of the square below, from military parades and polo matches to public executions and festive illuminations. The balcony was a statement of surveillance and spectacle, placing the king literally above his subjects, visible yet remote, the ultimate spectator of his own domain. But to understand the full message of Ali Kapı, you must leave the public view and climb the narrow, winding staircase to its upper floors. Here, far from the crowd's noise, lies a hidden chamber that reveals a startlingly different facet of Safavid rule. This is the music room. Stepping inside feels like entering the frozen heart of a melody. every surface from the ceiling down the walls is a breathtaking tapestry of muqarnas, those intricate honeycomb-like stalactite vaults. But this is muqarnas transformed. Instead of abstract geometric forms, the craftsmen shaped each individual cavity into the form of vases, bottles, and musical instruments. You see outlines of lutes, tambourines, and decanters, all carved deep into the plaster, creating a three-dimensional gallery of art and leisure. The visual effect is one of exquisite frozen harmony. Yet this beauty served a brilliant scientific purpose. All those deep, irregular niches were not merely decorative, they were an acoustic engineer's masterstroke. In a normal, flat-walled room, sound waves bounce back and forth, creating echoes and a muddled, reverberant noise. But in this chamber, the thousands of shaped cavities act as a perfect sound diffusion system. When musicians played for the Shah and his intimate guests, the sound waves would penetrate these niches and be broken up, their energy absorbed and scattered. This eliminated harsh echoes and created a crisp, clear, and surprisingly intimate acoustic environment. The delicate melodies of the setar or the gentle rhythm of the daf would remain pure and distinct, as if the room itself was listening. This is the hidden message of Ali Kapoor's music room, a fusion of artistic splendor and sophisticated physics. It whispers that the Safavid court's power was not expressed through military might alone, but through unparalleled cultural refinement. It celebrated the science of sound as a high art, embedding complex engineering into a space of aesthetic delight. The palace declared that a truly exalted ruler was a patron of the senses, a connoisseur who could command not just armies, but the very air to carry beauty without distortion. In this quiet upper room, power found its voice not in proclamation, but in perfect pitch. Across the square from the theater of power, a small, unassuming doorway leads to a world of silent, concentrated wonder. The Sheikh Lotfollah Mosque was built not for the public, but as a private chapel for the women of Shah Abbas's court. Its architecture immediately whispers secrecy and intimacy. Unlike every other major mosque, it has no minarets to call the faithful and no courtyard for communal gathering. You enter directly from the bustling square into a dim, tranquil corridor that bends gently, shielding the inner sanctuary from the outside world. This deliberate design forces a physical and mental transition, pulling you from the public spectacle into a space of pure, private contemplation. The hidden message is one of exclusive access, a jewel box of faith reserved for the Shah's most privileged circle. But the true revelation awaits under the dome. Step into the central chamber and look upward. The interior dome is a masterpiece of color and illusion, a canvas that breathes with the day. Its tiles are not a static blue, but a gradient of creams, golds, and sunset hues that shift from pale ivory at dawn to a deep, fiery apricot as the sun sets. This chromatic dance was no accident of aging glaze. It was a calculated artistic feat. The artisans mixed different colored tiles in precise ratios across the curved surface, creating a living painting that measures the passage of sacred time through light itself. The dome becomes a celestial clock, its face changing with the angle of the sun, a constant, gentle reminder of the divine presence in every moment. Yet the dome's ultimate secret is reserved for noon. At the precise center of the interior, where the dome meets its apex, an intricate medallion is fashioned in the unmistakable shape of a peacock's tail, its feathers fanning out in a sunburst of turquoise and gold. The architects left the peacock's body deliberately absent, suggested only by the pattern's flow. Then they perforated the walls with a delicate lattice of windows. When the sun reaches its zenith, shafts of brilliant light spear through these openings, striking the center of the dome. In that magical convergence, the beams of light form the spectral body and head of the peacock, completing the celestial bird. For a few minutes each day, the divine light itself acts as the artist, finishing the masterpiece. This was a profound mystical message, a private meditation on creation reserved for the elite few who stood in that chamber. It visualized a core Sufi and philosophical idea that the material world is merely an incomplete form awaiting the animating spirit of divine light. The universe in microcosm, hidden in a private royal mosque, whispered that true beauty and understanding are not found in grand declarations, but in quiet, illuminated moments where heaven briefly touches earth. The private illumination of the Sheikh Lotfallah Mosque revealed a heaven reserved for a chosen few, but a short distance away, a palace was built to offer a more accessible, yet equally profound, glimpse of paradise. In the royal gardens of Isfahan stands the Hasht-Behesht, the Palace of 8 Paradises. Its name is not poetic exaggeration, it is an architectural thesis. In Islamic cosmology, paradise or Jannah is often described as a lush garden with 8 gates, through which the righteous will enter eternal bliss. The Safavid architects, under the patronage of Shah Suleiman, set out to build a physical model of this promise here on earth. The palace is a perfect, elegant cube, crowned with a graceful dome and centered on a cruciform plan. From its central octagonal chamber, 4 tall iwans open outward, each facing a cardinal direction, and between them, 4 corner rooms complete the 8-sided symmetry. This layout is a direct, deliberate echo of the 8 gates of paradise. The building itself was not a sealed fortress, but an airy pavilion designed to dissolve the boundaries between inside and outside. Water was the lifeblood of this earthly paradise. From a central fountain in the main hall, channels would have carried cool water through the iwans and out into the surrounding gardens, which were once a masterpiece of Persian Chahar Bagh design, divided into 4 quadrants by waterways symbolizing the 4 rivers of paradise mentioned in scripture. The palace sat upon a raised platform, so a visitor would literally ascend from the mundane world into this idealized realm. Every sensory detail was calibrated for delight. The interior walls and ceilings were once covered in exquisite frescoes depicting flowering branches, singing birds, and intricate floral motifs. Though many have faded, you can still see traces where nightingales would have been forever frozen mid-song and where blossoms would have never wilted. This was the hidden message in pigment and plaster, a permanent springtime echoing the eternal youth promised to the faithful. The palace was a theater of sensory persuasion. A guest invited here would stroll through fragrant gardens, hear the gentle murmur of flowing water, feel the cool breeze channeled through the open iwans, and rest their eyes on paintings of an idyllic natural world. The combined effect was an overwhelming immersion in an artificial Eden. The Shah's power was demonstrated not through intimidating walls, but through his god-like ability to orchestrate perfection, to carve out a corner of the promised afterlife and offer it as a temporary gift to his courtiers and ambassadors. The Hasht-Behesht whispered that the ruler was not just a political leader, but a curator of divine beauty, a gardener of souls who could offer a foretaste of heaven as the ultimate demonstration of his earthly authority and divine favor. The promise of paradise was a garden of earthly delights, but 1,000 years earlier, a very different kind of aspiration pierced the sky. In the northern plains of Iran, far from Isfahan's ornate gardens, a solitary spear of baked earth announces a legacy not of pleasure but of intellect. This is the Gonbad-e-Kabas Tower, a 1,000-year-old brick monument that seems less built by human hands and more like a geometric truth thrust up from the earth. Rising 72 meters from a 10-meter-high artificial hill, its form is shockingly simple, a perfect cylinder topped by a conical roof, with 10 sharp, triangular flanges running vertically up its sides like the edges of a colossal star. In this stark, open landscape, its silhouette is a statement of pure, defiant identity. The hidden message is not in decoration, for there is none, but in the stark lines of its body and the precise words wrapped around its throat. 2 bands of elegant Kufic script carved directly into the brick circle the tower just below its roof. They are not prayers or poetry, but a direct, powerful proclamation. They name the man who lies within, Kabas ibn Voshmgir, the Ziyarid prince and ruler, and they declare this soaring structure his tomb. but the inscription goes much further, displaying a king's pride in knowledge. It provides the exact date of construction in both the Islamic lunar calendar and the ancient Iranian solar calendar, a dual dating that required sophisticated astronomical understanding. This was a ruler showing off his court's scholarly prowess, proving he could measure time by both heaven and tradition. The tower itself is the proof of that knowledge. Its proportions are a mathematical marvel, the ratio of its height to its diameter, the angle of its conical roof, all calculated to create an enduring, stable form that has withstood a millennium of earthquakes and winds. It is a landmark of power and learning fused into one, a silent, soaring shout across the plains that here, even at the edge of the known world, a king built his legacy not just on territory, but on the precise, unshakable pillars of science and self. The stark geometry of the Gonbad-e-Kabas Tower speaks of an older, solitary power, but in the heart of Shiraz, a later dynasty built a monument to a different kind of influence, one of reflection and fusion. The Naranjistan-e-Kavam is a 19th-century house that feels like a world unto itself, a sanctuary of orange trees and quiet pools built by a wealthy merchant family during the Qajar era. To walk through its doorway is to step into a delicate moment in Persian history, a time when the world was rushing in and the elite were deciding how to answer. The house is a masterpiece of understated elegance, but its true messages are not shouted from rooftops. They are whispered in the play of light and the details on the walls. Enter the main reception hall, and you are immediately enveloped by Ayne-Kari, the breathtaking art of mirror work. Thousands of tiny, carefully cut fragments of mirror are set into intricate floral and geometric patterns across the ceiling and upper walls. This is far more than luxurious decoration. On a practical level, it amplified the light from candles and oil lamps, making the interior glow, but symbolically it was a profound meditation. The shattered, reassembled mirrors create a shimmering, fractured infinity, a visual representation of the divine light reflected and multiplied in all creation. To sit in that hall was to be surrounded by endless, sparkling repetition, a constant, subtle reminder that the material world is but a reflection of a greater, unified reality. It was a hidden spiritual text written in glass and plaster, designed to elevate the mind even during a casual social gathering. This interplay of light and belief is matched by the stories told on the walls themselves. The painted frescoes throughout the house reveal a fascinating cultural dialogue. You see classic Persian motifs like delicate bote paisleys and scrolling vines, but beside them appear unexpected elements, European landscapes with distant castles, and even portraits of Qajar nobility in a hybrid style that blends Persian miniature techniques with Western perspective. A nobleman might be depicted in traditional robe and turban, but the room behind him recedes with a realism borrowed from European art. This was not mere imitation, it was a deliberate statement of identity. The Qajar elite, acutely aware of the growing political and technological power of Europe, were grappling with how to modernize without losing their Persian soul. These frescoes are that negotiation frozen in pigment. They announce that the homeowner is worldly, sophisticated, and engaged with global currents, yet remains firmly rooted in an ancient aesthetic tradition. The house itself is a map of social codes. Its layout, with clearly defined public reception areas, private family quarters, and secluded gardens, encodes the rituals of Qajar society. The Grand Iwan overlooking the central garden served as a stage for the host to receive guests, a space for public performance of status and hospitality. The more intimate rooms arranged around smaller courtyards sheltered family life. The entire complex orbits the garden, the Persian bog, which was always more than just a pleasure ground. It was a symbol of paradise, of order imposed upon nature, and of the family's cultivated taste and eternal aspiration. The Naranjistan-e-Kavam, in its every mirrored corner and painted bow, whispers the quiet confidence of a merchant class that saw itself as the custodian of Persian culture in a changing age, using beauty and symbolism to build a bridge between a glorious past and an uncertain future. The merchant's home was a sanctuary of reflection, but survival on the open road demanded something far more robust. Out in the searing emptiness of the central desert, a perfect circle of mud brick rises from the earth like a fortress from a dream. This is the caravanserai of Zain-od-Din, a 16th century way station built not for a king, but for the lifeblood of empire, the merchant. Its circular, two-story form with a single fortified gate was a deliberate design for an unforgiving world. The hidden message was not one of art or theology, but of practical, powerful assurance. In the vast, lawless stretches between cities, this caravanserai was a beacon. Its very silhouette on the horizon promised the three things every Silk Road traveler prayed for: security, water, and rest. The towering outer wall, devoid of windows on the lower level, was a shield against bandits and the scouring desert wind. Passing through the sole gateway, a merchant would enter another world, a wide, circular courtyard open to the sky. Around this central space, two levels of arched chambers provided shelter. The ground floor rooms, cool and dark, were stables for camels and donkeys, and secure storage for precious cargoes of silk, spices, and ceramics. The upper chambers were lodging for the travelers, simple cells where a man could sleep with his head resting on his saddle, knowing his goods were safe directly below. This architectural order was a silent contract. The circular plan meant every room faced the central courtyard, allowing the caravanserai's watchmen to observe all activity from a single vantage point. There were no dark corners, no hidden alleys. It was a panopticon of safety, broadcasting that within these walls the Shah's peace was enforced, but the Safavid vision of care extended beyond mere walls. Within the complex were two vital facilities. A small masjid or prayer room allowed travelers to fulfill their spiritual obligations, a reminder that their journey was under divine watch as well as the king's. Perhaps more welcome after months in the saddle was the hammam, the bathhouse. Here, the dust of continents could be washed away, sore muscles soothed, and a sense of civilized humanity restored. The provision of these amenities was a profound psychological message. It told the weary merchant that he was not just a source of tax revenue, but a valued participant in a grand system. The caravanserai was a node in a vast, intentional network. Dozens of these inns dotted the major trade routes, spaced roughly a day's journey apart. This was the internet of its age, a physical infrastructure that moved goods, information, and culture across thousands of miles. By building and maintaining this network, the Safavid state was sending a coded message deep into the desert. You are under the protection of the Shah, trade freely, and Persia's power extends even here. The caravanserai did not just offer shelter, it guaranteed the flow of wealth, making the desert itself a territory of controlled, prosperous passage. The caravanserai's promise of safety was a human covenant, but the greatest promise a king could make was to tame the land itself. In the city of Shushtar, a thunderous testament to that ambition still roars. The Shushtar historical hydraulic system is not a single monument, but a symphony of stone and water, a sprawling network of dams, tunnels, canals, and watermills that transformed the entire landscape. Built primarily during the Sasanian era, legend holds it was engineered with the help of captured Roman soldiers, turning the skills of a vanquished empire into the tools of Persian prosperity. The hidden message here is one of breathtaking, absolute mastery. This was a civilization declaring it could wrestle a river to its knees and command it to work. The target was the Karun River, the largest and most powerful in Iran, known for its destructive floods and unpredictable flow. The Sasanians did not try to simply block it, they redirected its very soul. At the heart of the system was the Gargawir, a massive barrier that forced a portion of the river's flow into a hand-dug canal. This diverted water was then channeled through a mountainside via a dark, awe-inspiring tunnel known as the Darius Tunnel, emerging to feed the entire complex. The water-powered giant watermills for grinding grain fed irrigation canals that turned the arid plains of Shushtar into a verdant breadbasket, and even supplied a fortified city on a man-made island. But the true genius, the hidden brain of the operation, was a structure called the Mizzen Dam. This was not a dam in the conventional sense, but a precise water divider and regulator. Built of massive stone blocks, its crest was carefully calibrated. It allowed the main river to flow over it, but it precisely split the diverted flow between two major canals based on a fixed ratio. This ensured a fair, predictable, and unchangeable distribution of water to different agricultural districts downstream, regardless of the whims of local officials or the river's mood. The Mizzen was a stone judge enforcing hydrological law with impartial mathematical certainty. This entire system was a statement far beyond irrigation. It was the ultimate propaganda of peace. A king who could control water in a land defined by scarcity held the key to life itself. By turning a volatile, destructive force into a predictable source of food, industry, and civic order, the Sasanian rulers demonstrated that their rule was synonymous with prosperity. They did not just conquer territory, they conquered chaos. The roaring cascades and silent, deep canals whispered that here, human intellect had imposed a permanent, beneficial order upon nature, and that order was the very definition of civilization. The roar of tamed rivers fades into the whispering of leaves. In a quiet corner of Shiraz, the true power of Persia is found not in stone or water, but in words. The tomb of Hafez rests in a garden called the Musalla, a place of such profound serenity it feels like a held breath. The marble cenotaph itself, sheltered under an open, octagonal pavilion, is from the 20th century, a graceful but modern tribute. The hidden messages here are not carved in relief. They float on the air, carried on the sound of pages turning and murmured verses. This is a monument to a living language. Visitors do not merely look, they participate. The central ritual is Fal-e-Hafez, the poetic oracle. Someone, often a young person grappling with a life decision, will sit beside the tomb, close their eyes, and open a worn copy of the poet's divan at random. They place a finger on a verse without looking. That verse, dense with layers of meaning, becomes their counsel for the day. Is it a love poem about the nightingale and the rose, or a cryptic line about the hypocrisy of the pious? The interpretation is a personal, intimate dialogue with the poet's ghost, a search for hidden guidance in metaphors written 6 centuries ago. The garden is designed for this introspection. Cypress trees, symbols of eternity, line the paths, while orange trees offer sweetness and shade. The open pavilion over the tomb ensures Hafez rests under the same stars he so often wrote about, dissolving the barrier between his world and ours. His words are not confined to books. They are etched into the marble of the tombstone and the surrounding walls, flowing in elegant calligraphy that is itself a form of visual poetry. The message encoded in this tranquil space is that culture's most enduring monument is its voice. Hafez mastered the art of the hidden message. His ghazals are layered like an onion. On the surface, they sing of wine, taverns, and earthly beauty, a celebration of life's joys. To the orthodox religious scholar of his time, this could seem scandalous. But peel back the layer, and the wine becomes a metaphor for divine love, the tavern a Sufi lodge, and the beloved a glimpse of God. His poetry became a safe space for spiritual rebellion and philosophical doubt, wrapped in beautiful, ambiguous imagery that could never be pinned down by authorities. To visit his tomb is to step into that ambiguity. It is a secular shrine and a holy site, a place for tourists and pilgrims, for lovers and scholars. The quiet hum of concentration is punctuated by the soft recitation of verses, as if the stones themselves are speaking. In a nation where history is so often written in the hard lines of empires and revolutions, this garden insists on a different power, the soft, persistent, and subversive power of a poem that refuses to die, offering solace and challenge with every turned page. But to build a community of knowledge, you must first create a sanctuary for the mind. In the heart of the desert city of Kashan, a 19th century complex achieves this with breathtaking, quiet intelligence. The Jameh Mosque and School is a masterpiece of symmetry and subterranean design, a place that teaches its lessons not through lectures but through its very walls. You approach and see a modest brick facade, giving little hint of the revelation within. To enter, you do not climb steps, you descend them. The entire central courtyard is sunken deep into the earth, a hidden garden of tranquility lying below the level of the bustling streets. This is the first and most profound architectural lesson, a lesson in humility. True wisdom, the building whispers, requires a descent, a leaving behind of the noisy world above to enter a place of quiet contemplation. The sunken courtyard is also a brilliant feat of passive environmental engineering. The Earth's mass insulates the space, keeping it remarkably cool in Kashan's blistering summer heat and warm during its chilly winters. The air circulates naturally in this deep bowl, creating a perpetual, gentle breeze. Here, the architecture itself becomes a teacher of resourcefulness, showing how to work with nature to create a perfect climate for study. Arranged around this serene, sunken courtyard are the student cells, the hujre. These are small, arched rooms where theological students would live and study, each one opening directly onto the shared central space. This design fosters a powerful sense of community. A student in his cell could always glance up and see his peers across the way, a silent reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is a collective journey, not a solitary one. The cells are simple, focusing the mind inward, while the shared courtyard encourages connection outward. Dominating one side of the courtyard is the mosque itself, crowned by two elegant brick domes and a tall, graceful wind catcher that pulls cool air down into the prayer hall. Step inside and your eye is drawn immediately to the mihrab, the prayer niche. It is a stunning mosaic of mirrored tiles and calligraphy, a focal point of divine light and word. But look at its placement. It is perfectly aligned on the central axis of the entire complex, visible from almost every point in the courtyard. This is the spiritual heart, visually connected to every academic cell. The message is clear: all study, all earthly knowledge must be oriented toward the divine. The integration is seamless. Beneath the courtyard lies the hammam, the bathhouse, ensuring the community's physical cleanliness, while a library would have housed its intellectual treasures. Every human need, from the bodily to the scholarly to the spiritual, is met within this balanced, symmetrical plan. The Jameh is a brick and tile manifesto on how to build a community of knowledge. Its perfect symmetry teaches balance and order. Its sunken courtyard teaches humility and environmental harmony. Its integrated design teaches that a life of the mind cannot be separated from the needs of the body or the yearning of the soul. It is a school where the first and last lesson is written in the very ground you walk on. Before the first Persian Empire ever rose, a different king attempted to build his own stairway to heaven. Rising from the dusty plains of Khuzestan, the ziggurat of Chogha-Zanbil is a colossal mass of sun-baked mud brick, a 5-story mountain built not by the Achaemenids but by the Elamites over 3,000 years ago. Dedicated to the supreme god Inshushinak, this was a sacred city designed around a single, overwhelming purpose: to bridge the gap between Earth and the divine realm. The structure itself is a geometric manifesto. It was built as a series of perfect, concentric square walls, each level smaller than the last, creating a towering stepped pyramid that originally would have been faced in gleaming, glazed blue bricks. Imagine that sight from miles away, a brilliant, azure mountain shimmering in the heat, a beacon of celestial ambition. This was the core hidden message, a declaration that the Elamite king, through sheer will and devotion, could create a physical axis where gods and humans could meet. The ziggurat was not a temple in the conventional sense. It was a cosmic launchpad, with a sacred temple at its very summit where only the highest priests could perform rituals to commune with Inshushinak. Every pilgrim's climb up its ramps was a symbolic ascent from the mundane world toward the heavens, but the king's vision extended beyond a single god. The true political genius is revealed in the smallest components of the structure, the very bricks themselves. Archaeologists have found thousands of baked bricks, each one stamped with a cuneiform inscription. They bear the name of the builder, King naqsh-e, but they also carry dedications not just to Inshushinak but to a multitude of other gods from across the Elamite realm. This was a deliberate policy of religious inclusion carved into the building blocks of the state. By inviting these other deities to have a sacred place within his grand complex, naqsh-e was sending a powerful message of unity to the diverse peoples of his kingdom. He was building a theological coalition in brick and mortar, suggesting that all paths within his domain led upward to this one unifying sacred center. His ziggurat was meant to be the spiritual capital of a unified land, and then suddenly the work stopped. The great ziggurat was never finished, the upper layers were never added, the blue glaze never fully applied. The sacred city was abandoned, leaving behind a haunting, skeletal monument. This abrupt end holds the final, silent message of Chog-Azanbil. Was it a sudden invasion by the fierce Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, whose annals boast of destroying Elamite sites? Was it a shift in political power or a devastating economic crisis that drained the kingdom's resources? Or did the priests and the people themselves begin to believe that the gods had withdrawn their favor, that the cosmic connection was broken, making further construction a futile act? The unanswered question hangs over the ruins. The monument thus speaks in two powerful, contradictory voices, the booming ambition of its conception, declaring unity and divine partnership, and the whispering mystery of its abandonment, a testament to the fragile nature of even the grandest human plans when faced with the unpredictable tides of history, war, or faith. It stands as a frozen moment, a stairway that reaches ambitiously for the sky but ends abruptly, reminding us that some messages are not about completion, but about the awe-inspiring scale of the attempt itself. The ambition to build a stairway to heaven speaks to a profound human yearning, but some places on Earth were already considered a gateway. In the remote highlands of northwestern Iran, a mountain rises not from tectonic force, but from the breath of the planet itself. Takht-e Solomon, the throne of Solomon, is a volcanic caldera, a collapsed crater that has filled over millennia with a placid, turquoise lake. Encircling this mystical water is a massive stone wall, creating a fortress in the sky. This was no palace for a king, but a sanctuary for a flame, one of the three most sacred fires in all of Zoroastrianism. The hidden message of this place is not carved, it is geological. The entire site is a declaration of sacred geography, a direct tap into the primordial forces that shaped the world. To reach it was a pilgrimage, an ascent into a realm where the elements spoke in their purest form. The lake itself, fed by deep mineral springs, was believed to be bottomless, a portal to the subterranean waters of the underworld. Its surface, perfectly still and impossibly blue, reflected the sky while hiding untold depths, a perfect symbol of the hidden, mysterious nature of creation. The earth here was not inert, it was alive, breathing sulfur through vents and warming the water from below. This was the ultimate meeting point, where water emerged from fire-scorched earth cradled by the air of the high mountains. For the Sasanian priests, this convergence made it the most potent site imaginable to house the Azargoshnasp fire, the fire of the warriors and kings. They built their grand temple here not in spite of the volcano, but because of it. The fire altar was not fueled by ordinary wood, but by the very essence of the sacred site, its eternal flame, a man-made echo of the earth's own inner fire, blessed and amplified by the surrounding water. This was alchemy in landscape form, a belief that by placing their most sacred symbol at this elemental crossroads, they could harness and direct the foundational power of the universe toward the protection and glory of the empire. The complex was a microcosm of the Zoroastrian universe, with each element represented in perfect dramatic balance. Later, even the Mongol conquerors, in awe of the site's palpable power, left their own mark, adding a summer palace and adapting the structures, layering their history onto a place they too recognized as fundamentally charged. But the deepest whisper of Naqsh-e Solomon is a claim of origin. Ancient traditions held that this was the birthplace of Zoroaster himself, where the prophet first received his revelations. Whether historical fact or powerful myth, this belief cemented the site's meaning. The message in the remote silence of this crater is that here, at this specific intersection of water, stone, and flame, the cosmic order became clear and the spiritual identity of a civilization was ignited. The location itself is the entire text, a scripture written in lake water and volcanic rock, arguing that true power and sanctity are not constructed, but discovered in the raw, untamed grammar of the earth. That volcanic crater spoke of raw, elemental power, but the divine can also be found in the most delicate of filters. Back in Shiraz, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque offers a radically different kind of revelation. From the outside, its Qajar-era facade is beautiful, adorned with the classic pink tiles that give it its nickname, the Pink Mosque, but it reveals little of the secret held within. You must step inside, and you must come at dawn. As the morning sun climbs over the city, it strikes the southern wall of the main prayer hall, which is not a solid barrier of brick but a towering screen of stained glass. This is the moment of transformation. The sunlight passes through hundreds of panes of colored glass, deep blues, rich reds, vibrant yellows, and emerald greens. It does not simply illuminate the hall, it floods it, projecting a living, shifting kaleidoscope of light directly onto the floor. The geometric patterns of the stained glass are cast, magnified, and distorted across the room's thick Persian carpets and up the fluted columns and painted arches. For an hour or so each morning, the entire space becomes a vessel of pure, liquid color. The hidden message here is written not in stone but in ephemeral light. It is a profound meditation on transient beauty, a daily reminder that the divine presence, like the sunbeam, is both breathtakingly real and impossible to grasp or hold. This effect was no happy accident, it was carefully, brilliantly engineered. The stained glass windows are set within an arched framework of stone that acts like a giant sundial and lens. The architects understood the precise angle of the winter sun, when its light is softer and lower in the sky, and designed the hall to capture it perfectly during the morning prayers. The colored glass then fractures that pure white light into its constituent spectrum, a physical demonstration of unity giving birth to glorious diversity. This sensory journey is anchored by the walls themselves, which are covered in a continuous tapestry of jiri tiles, those intricate geometric star and floral patterns that seem to bloom across every surface. The floral motifs, roses and lilies intertwined with complex webs of lines, represent paradise itself. When the moving colored light passes over these static patterns, something magical happens. The two layers, the engineered light and the crafted tile, merge. The flowers appear to sway, the geometric webs seem to pulse, and the entire room breathes. It creates an immersive, otherworldly experience that is meant to overwhelm the rational mind and speak directly to the soul. The message is clear: prayer is not merely the recitation of words in a quiet room. It is a full sensory immersion, a deliberate journey where beauty acts as the guide. The shimmering light on the carpet, the warmth of the sun on your back, the silence broken only by the play of color, all of it is designed to pull you out of the mundane and into a state of awe. The Nasir al-Mulk Mosque argues that the pathway to the divine is paved with wonder, and that in the deliberate, joyful appreciation of transient beauty, we come closest to understanding the eternal. Light and color dissolve into the solid geometry of a modern tribute. In the city of Hamadan, a different kind of sanctuary rises, one built not for kings or prophets, but for the human mind itself. The tomb of Avicenna, the great physician and philosopher known to the world as Ibn Sina, is a monument from 1954. Its relative youth might seem to place it outside our search for ancient whispers, but its message is no less deliberate, no less coded in its form. This is not a relic to be deciphered, but a manifesto in stone and garden, a 20th century declaration about the very soul of Persian civilization. The structure masterfully fuses two distinct lineages. Its most striking feature is a tall, fluted concrete tower, a clear, respectful nod to the 1,000-year-old Gonbad-e Kabas. That ancient tower was a spear of identity and secular power, built by a king who proudly displayed his mastery of calendars and mathematics. By echoing its form, the architects of Avicenna's tomb were drawing a direct line through time. They were connecting the polymath to a deep, pre-Islamic wellspring of Persian intellectual pursuit, suggesting his genius did not emerge from a vacuum, but was the flowering of an ancient, native tradition of rational inquiry. Yet this tower does not stand in isolation. It is rooted in a serene, traditional Persian garden with pathways, fountains, and rows of trees. This is the classic Chahar Bagh, the four-part paradise garden that symbolizes eternal order and spiritual reflection. The fusion is the message. The soaring tower of knowledge is grounded in the cultivated, peaceful garden of Persian culture. It argues that Avicenna's towering intellect grew from and nourished this specific soil, that rational science and spiritual contemplation are not enemies here, but intertwined roots of the same great tree. The building's function makes this curation explicit. It is not merely a tomb, it is an active library and a museum. Within its walls, his books are preserved, his instruments displayed, his life's work made accessible. This transforms the site from a passive memorial into an active academy. The hidden message is one of revival and stewardship. By building this complex in the mid-20th century, Iran was asserting a modern national identity, deeply proud of its intellectual heritage. In a world increasingly divided by new ideologies, this monument pointed to Avicenna as a unifying hero. He was a figure claimed by the Islamic world, the Persian world, and the entire history of global science. His canon of medicine was a foundational textbook in European universities for centuries. His philosophical works bridged Aristotle and the Enlightenment. The tomb, therefore, declares him a citizen of the world, but one whose primary passport was stamped in Persia. It is a statement of confidence, a claim that the light of the Renaissance of rational humanism was kindled much earlier and farther east. The monument whispers that the future of a nation is built not just on resources or politics, but on the active, proud remembrance of the minds that taught humanity how to see the world clearly. It turns the legacy of one man into a living classroom, insisting that the most important messages are not those hidden by time, but those we choose to elevate, protect, and teach to every new generation. But even the grandest monuments to intellect can feel remote, built for kings and scholars. Our final destination strips away all stone grandeur, leaving only the fragile, astonishing evidence of ordinary people. In the remote southeastern desert lies Shah-e-Sakhteh, the burnt city, a Bronze Age settlement that flourished 5,000 years ago. Its name comes from a catastrophe that happened not once, but repeatedly, as sections of the mud-brick city were consumed by fire, only to be rebuilt again and again on the ashes. There are no soaring domes or carved reliefs here, only low mounds and the ghosts of walls. The true monuments of Shah-e-Sakhteh are not buildings, but the objects left behind in the burnt layers, preserved by the very disasters that destroyed them. Each artifact is a sealed message, a whisper from a humanity instantly recognizable across 50 centuries. In one grave, archaeologists found a prosthetic eye. Fashioned from a lightweight mixture of natural tar and animal fat, it was delicately engraved with a central iris and radiating lines to mimic a pupil, and even had tiny gold wire to hold it in place. This was no mere ornament for the dead. Microscopic analysis revealed capillaries and deposits that proved the woman had worn it for years during her life. The hidden message is one of profound compassion and medical ingenuity, a community's effort to restore not just sight but dignity and wholeness to one of its own. In another corner of the city, amid the ashes of a home, lay a set of small, carved pieces and a board. This was no child's toy, but a complex strategy game, one of the earliest ever discovered. Imagine two citizens of this desert city, their day's work done, sitting by a flickering lamp, their minds locked in quiet competition. The game whispers of leisure, of the human need for mental challenge and social bonding that transcends mere survival. But the most startling medical evidence came from a skull, bearing the precise, clean marks of a surgical procedure. Someone here, 5 millennia ago, attempted a form of trepanation, carefully drilling a hole in the living bone, likely to relieve pressure or treat a severe ailment. The bone showed signs of healing, meaning the patient survived the operation, at least for a while. This fragment of cranium speaks a bold message of empirical courage, a willingness to intervene directly in the fragile vessel of the mind long before modern medicine. Yet the most eloquent of all these buried messages was found on a simple painted goblet. Around its circumference runs a sequence of images. A goat stands before a tree. In the next frame, it leaps upward. Then it reaches the leaves and eats. This is not a random decoration. It is a sequential narrative designed to be seen as the cup is turned. When spun, the images blur into motion, creating the illusion of the goat springing to life. Many scholars believe this to be the world's earliest known attempt at animation, a primitive flipbook in ceramic. The hidden story here is not of kings or gods, but of observation and delight. An artist watched the natural world, saw the simple, graceful action of an animal feeding, and was moved to capture its essence in a way that played with time and perception. It is a message of pure creative joy. These objects, the eye, the game, the skull, the goblet, are the true monuments of Shah-e-Sukhteh. They tell no epic tales of empire, but they reveal everything. They speak of a society sophisticated enough to craft artificial organs, advanced enough to attempt brain surgery, cultured enough to devise games of intellect, and poetic enough to try and make a painted goat leap forever. Their message is one of unexpected, intimate humanity thriving in a harsh landscape. They remind us that the most profound secrets of a civilization are often not shouted from palaces, but whispered from the broken pieces of daily life, waiting in the ashes for us to listen. From the intimate whispers of a painted goat to the thunderous proclamations carved 300 feet high, this journey across 25 monuments reveals a civilization that spoke in 1,000 tongues. We have listened to the stone manifestos of kings like Darius at Behistun, who etched his divine right into an untouchable cliff. We have wandered the cosmic blueprints of faith, where the domes of Isfahan mapped the heavens in geometry and light. We have traced the hidden manuals of survival, from the wind-cooled bricks of Bam to the hydrological law of Shushta's ancient dams. These messages were never meant to be simple. They were layered like the Jiri tiles on a mosque wall, each piece part of a greater, dazzling whole. Some were bold propaganda declaring military triumph or benevolent rule. Others were delicate philosophical arguments about the soul's ascent or the nature of divine light. Some were simply the quiet records of a game played, an eye crafted, or a garden planted, proving that humanity itself is the most enduring monument of all. Together, they form a single, epic text, the autobiography of Persia, written not on fragile parchment, but in the enduring language of architecture and artifact. It is a history you can walk through, touch, and feel humming beneath your feet. Each site is a chapter, waiting for curious eyes to read between the lines, to see the ambition in a brick and the prayer in a pool of colored light. So we turn the final page of this exploration to you. Which of these hidden messages resonated most deeply? Was it the political genius of a multilingual inscription, the spiritual engineering of a mirrored hall, or the humble courage of a 5,000-year-old surgical tool? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the layers of history, subscribe for more journeys into the world's greatest mysteries. Remember, from the desert towers to the palace gardens, the stones are speaking. Are you listening?